All right. Let me jump back on here. Well, I wanted to show that because I had just recently read this guy's book, Stumbling Upon Happiness by Dan Gilbert. And then I thought it was pretty cool. And I think what we'll talk about here with Juston a little bit is, at times we really complicate life because the success that we have ends up being really just simple. It's a bunch of compounded, simple steps that we do every day to build upon, each other and then to be successful. Just like he talks about being happy, it's really not complicated. There's not a magic pill, but sometimes we make it really hard, and it's just doing those small, simple things every day. So anyway, I put a little link in the group chat for that video as well as the book, if you guys are interested in that. And then also I've been kind of organizing all of these videos that I've been doing, or these weekly Zoom calls, on a YouTube page. So feel free to jump on there and subscribe to it, and you can see all the past ones and the future ones and what have you, if it's of any value and help. So anyway, Juston Puchar, welcome. Thank you for being on this, man. How are you doing today?
Oh, just fantastic.
Well, you look fantastic.
Well, I just shaved a 4-month COVID beard off last night. So
I know, man. You were looking pretty grizzly. So a lot of you are on the call, and I know more people will be joining. You guys probably know Juston, but maybe haven't dived into a little bit more of his story, which we're going to do today. So I will introduce Juston a little bit better. I met Juston, I met you, 2 or 3 years ago? We kind of joined a mastermind that we were a part of together that we still kind of, go to once a month. Yep. And so got to know Juston, and we've hung out a couple of times, outside of work. And anyway, one of the things that makes me happy is talking to Juston. So, I am stumbling upon happiness with Juston right now. So I'm going to read his bio. I posted it, but and then I'll have Juston add to it. But Juston began investing in 2004, where he bought his first home in Murray. At that time, he didn't know if he would rent in it or live in it, whether he would change the carpet or clean it, if he should rip out the powder blue counter and forest green backsplash or refinish them. All of those choices forced him to create systems and reasons for why I should or should not make decisions that affect my bottom line. He is far more intentional now about how he does things, creating immense value and benefit for himself and clients. And he's been in the business for 17 years, directly as a realtor, investor, flipper, property manager, landlord, lender, and entrepreneur. He's represented banks selling REO assets, consulted with investors in their home markets of over 22 states, and many things in between. All of those experiences have given him the perspective and skill in making key decisions that create a full life for his family. He's an avid cyclist, husband and proud father of 2, and he loves what he's doing every single day. So what else can you add to that, man?
Oh, man, you've had a lot of illustrious guests on this, so people might be disappointed that I'm here, but we'll try to provide some value today.
No, I love it. Everyone's story is unique and in its own. And then I've found that I learn something new every week talking to different people. And the goal with all of these calls, and I know I can speak for you in this because I know you're a giver, is if there's one thing that some people can take away from this and act upon, that's kind of my whole goal, right? Like something I can get from this and take action on, something that, anyone on this call can take away and then take action on. That's the whole goal of this, is to provide value, provide a different voice and experiences, especially, as we're coming out of COVID, where we haven't really been able to meet that much together. But anyway, so, well, let's start. I really like kind of starting at the beginning. You kind of talked about it in your bio, but I always like to know why real estate and why did you connect with it? And, just briefly, how did you get started?
Well, I could go into this for several different startup things that took me there. But at the time, I would say maybe 2001, I was living in California just for the summer. And I picked up a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that blew me away. I drove up to Sacramento to listen to Dolph DeRoos speak. And it was like my calling, right? And so I went back to college. I took the 2 real estate classes I could and just figured, hey, I'm going to get into real estate developing. And in 2003, the job market sucked. I mean, it was terrible. And so I started doing loans. So I was like literally calling out of the phone book, trying to do no cost refinance loans with Provident funding. And I was, doing it. And I was making more money than I could have gotten a job at. So then I was like, I'm going to buy a property. I'm going to become an investor. And it just propelled from there. So the one thing that really did it for me though, is I had a friend that I'd made, and he's already driving a nice car, like a nice Lexus or something. And actually it was a Lexus. And one day he switched and he bought this Porsche Carrera 911. And I was like, what the hell? And all of a sudden, like the next month, he bought like this 5,000 square foot house up on the hill. And I was like really impressed. But he's always very vague. And so I just started following him to work. And I started seeing what he was doing. And I brought a deal to him. And I watched how he did it and how he interacted. And it was terrible. It was absolutely atrocious. I was like, there's no way I would do business that way. And that's what pushed me into it.
That's awesome. So this is a very common theme, I think, as far as your first initial spark, as far as like real estate, that many people on my calls have had, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? So you found a book or you found something that connected with you. Tell us a little bit more. I'm curious. I've never heard of the Dolph. What was his name? Dolph?
Yeah, he's like an author that would co-author on some stuff with Kiyosaki.
Okay, awesome. So that kind of lit your fire, and you thought, oh man, so this is maybe a way where I could, at first, was it like you said, just kind of like, hey, maybe I can make a few bucks doing this, but you felt something deep inside you was like, okay, this is it, right? This is, real estate's going to be the thing.
Well, I mean, when you're single and you're not, you don't have a lot of commitments, like I was thinking long term. So even in college, I wasn't in debt, right? Like I always had a couple $100 or a couple $1,000. Like I knew how to budget, right? And so when you start making money, and really this is a principle for anybody that's doing wealth, it's like super simple, but it's really hard to do, is you save more than you spend, right? You invest for a rainy day, for the future. And so I was really principle based already. And so I just saw, hey, I don't want to work till I'm old. I want to work till I don't have to work.
Yeah. That's awesome. So then you started doing loans, and then I like this part. So you were pretty determined to figure out a better way. You probably weren't super content with the loans then, right? Like that wasn't totally lighting a fire under you every day.
I think, I was thinking about this while I was riding up Mount Nebo, which is totally crazy. It's like a 25-mile summit to go 5,000 feet. It's like a 2-hour climb. And I was listening to some tunes, and I was listening to, P. Diddy and some old school rap. And, how rappers always talk about like growing up poor and things like that. Like I literally grew up poor, like I alternated my jeans every other day. I just didn't have money. And so it drove me to like have the finer things and to have the ability. And so like to this day, I remember in college, like all the rich kids, man, they were going boating. And I was like, gosh, as soon as I get done with college, I have enough money, I'm going to buy a boat, right? I just want to do that. And when I had enough money, I was like, I don't want a boat, but I've got options, right? I was disciplined. And so I think this industry gives you so much, and you can give so much back, and you can make way more than maybe you deserve. So that's what's driven me, I think, is just giving me financial flexibility.
Financial flexibility. And it seems like early on, and I've gathered this about you, knowing you for the last 2 or 3 years, you're very intentional in everything you do, right? Like the small things as well as the big things, the conversations you have. One thing you guys will get to know about Juston is you get to know more. You're very direct, right? Like in a good way. You're very direct. It's kind of no nonsense. And I think it goes back to kind of maybe your personality and the way you're wired, right? Just being very intentional. And that makes sense too, when you saw this guy driving that Lexus, or what you perceived to be a really, really nice car.
Yeah.
You kind of had this maybe from your child, like, oh, I want something like that, right? Like, so if he has it, how did he get it, right? Yep. And so talk a little bit more about that, because it sounds like this was maybe a little turning point when you followed him and you realized, man, if this idiot can do this, like, why can't I, right? Like, so you weren't overly impressed by what he was doing after you followed him a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I got to know who he hung out with, who his mentor was, and that guy became my mentor. And
awesome.
So he, it's like a string of who you hang out with can produce bigger results than what you can do on your own.
Yep.
And so I just made better friends. And before I knew it, I was filling out, financial statements every quarter. How much are you worth? Or how much has your equity grown? Or what have you bought? And what has it done for you? And so, and I was a worker, right? I'd work late, and before long, it was just me and the mentor in the office. And so I'd ask him questions and he'd give back, and I would go and do more for him. And it was just a true symbiotic relationship. And I just, I'm really grateful to people I've met, and I don't try to be a guy that sucks the life out of people, I'm not going to brain suck you. I'm going to provide value, but I take something from everybody.
Yeah.
I physically actually remember you, Matt, because you were on some panel at the RIA. I was like, dude, for that guy's name, I want to meet him. And I just went and met you, and I would say we're like legitimate friends, and we interact and chat. I love chatting with you, and it was just
absolutely.
I want to take things from you, and I have. I've learned, dude, tons of things from you, and I want to be that resource to other people as well.
No, I think that's such a great point, and I feel the exact same way. So I know there's a lot of people on the call and others that will listen later that are new to the business, and they're trying to get that foothold, maybe where you were or I was back in 10, 15 years ago. And so I think with that attitude of providing value and giving more than you take, you end up attracting people that feel the same way, and then you'll attract those mentors. And then also, I know you feel the same way, like we said, is that's my goal too, is to provide value and help other people, even if it's just through ideas at first. And then what naturally, you trust it quite a bit, and it just makes it easy to do deals. So we're just wrapping up one, right? We did a little, some people that have been around.
I can't hear Matt anymore. Can you hear him, Bree?
I can't hear him at all.
Yeah, I lost him. Maybe his internet's down. Well, maybe I know one thing that Matt and I kind of briefly talked about is he kind of wanted to know, one thing that I do to kind of leverage people or my team or things that I do. So maybe I'll talk about that while he's gone or while he's coming back. Is leverage to me is you get a higher value out of something than you can just do on your own. And so leverage, I've got a couple of assistants, I've got a couple of entrepreneurial type situations to where people are producing value more than I can do on my own. Matt, we kind of dropped you, so we're kind of talking about leverage here for a second.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that, guys. This has happened every once in a while, and my internet just went a little spotty at the wrong time. So thanks for keeping it rolling, man.
Yeah. So we were just talking about leverage, or what I do to leverage, because you've asked me multiple times, how do I get better at leveraging, or what can I do with other people? Do you have a question on that?
Yeah. And so, in one of the things in your bio, right? You do a lot of stuff, and I think you do a lot of stuff really well. So you've obviously been lending, and I know you have a property management company. You do a lot of flips, you do some lending, you do a lot of retail, residential real estate stuff, which if you did that all on your own, I've been in your shoes, right? Where it's impossible to do all that stuff without having a good system and process. And I think that's where it goes back to, I think you're very intentional about what you do. So you're intentional about how you're going to make it work, right? So what I want to do is let's talk about that in general, and then maybe we can talk about some specifics, right? To kind of illustrate it. So maybe talk about at first that mindset of how you get it set up so that it can be a little bit more automated. And then what I've really liked learning from you is your retail real estate business side of it, as well as your property management side of it, right? Because those are very complex. And if you're doing those all on your own, they're going to take just a ton of time, right? So talk a little bit about that.
Man, I could talk for 2 hours on just what you just asked me. So,
well, let's dive into it. Because I think that's one of your skill sets that's super high, right? Like that I've told you over and over, it's really hard for me to be able to do that. And so you do it really well. And so I think it's super valuable.
Well, I think and I appreciate that, but I think, it takes, Wall Street Journal says it takes, 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. And real estate is so vast. Like you could do so many different things and just suck at all of them. And so I think you got to pull one arrow out of your quiver at a time. Get really good at buyers before you move to listings, and get really good at short sales before you go to foreclosure auction, and get really good at managing your own property before you take on some other properties. And so, I feel relatively young, but I am, almost at year 20, and I've spent the time, right? And so what you've got to do is what I've done is I've created playbooks, right? At first it's just a checklist. Hey, do this, then this, then this, and this. And now I've created playbooks, and some of them have videos. And so when a staff member says, well, how do I comp? And I don't have to spend, 20 minutes showing them how to do it. I'm like, did you watch video 1? Did you watch video 2? Did you watch video 3? Did you follow the playbook to a T? On an open house, like we spend so much time getting these flips right. We have a prescribed process how to do the open house down to the day we list, the days we do price adjustments, how we do our photography, or how we do our Matterport, or how we do our circle calls, or how we do group open houses. All that's a system. And so I think anytime you're trying to be an investor, you don't want it to all be up here. Like it's got to get on paper. It's got to get on a Google spreadsheet. You have to have prescribed systems so that you can have a standard. If you've got a system, you can have a standard, but you can't have a standard without a system.
Right.
And so I think, when you talk about property management, I started managing my own, and I figured out, look, I can do this. I think everybody should manage their own. And then I stopped saying that because there's a lot of nuances to it. And then I hired a first assistant to manage it, right? And then I'd coach them. They'd do it, put their own twist on it, and then we'd hire another person. And then clients would, work into it, buy a property, and want us to manage it. And so we started taking on more and more. And so now I leverage those abilities so that I don't have to spend that, I don't know what it is, $20, $30 an hour task when you want to just own it and run it, but make sure you can control the outcomes.
Right.
So, there's technology and software, but you've got to have those standards.
That's awesome. So and I love what you just said there, having at first, you got to start with small steps. One, do it yourself. Not only do it yourself, but do the best practices, and kind of back up a little bit more, kind of the start of your story, looking for resources and education for yourself first. You got to train yourself. You got to learn how to do it. You got to have the bats at the plate, the reps. And then you can create your own checklist and system and playbook, like you said, right? That you can then pass off to somebody else. So what was most natural to you at first when you started your real estate career? Was it agent stuff, or was it buying your own deals, or was it buying rent? What was it that you started with first?
Well, I started off loans, and what loans really taught me is how to understand underwriting. How does a bank think about it? So before this Burr method was ever open, like I learned about the difference between rate and term, difference in cash out and purchase money. And I figured out a way you buy with private money and you refinance and can get most of your money out of it. And so for me, like financing was a huge component to me understanding real estate. So I would help a few agents like figure out how to close deals. And I'm sorry, they just did not know what they were doing. And I'd tell them, no, this is a deadline. And when I quickly understood, I understood the paperwork better than the realtor. That was a challenge. And so for me, I started buying rentals, right? And right off the bat, it was all foreclosure and short sale. We were down at the auction buying every day, and we are doing mass short sales. And so, when the foreclosure boom happened, people are like, oh, I got to get into foreclosure or short sale crap. And I was like, no, I love it. I know it takes 4, 6, 9 months. It doesn't affect me at all.
Right.
And I was like, I want the deal. I don't want the commission. So any realtor commission work came later. So in the beginning, literally, I just had my door open, listening to other people having conversations. What should I do? Did a spec house. I was buying rentals, I was buying at the auction. And literally, I would die to pass on some of those deals I passed on just regularly because those were so cherry. And they would be so cherry now. We just don't even have. So.
Right. Well, maybe too, our perception changes with the change in values, especially when we've been in it long enough where you see where you could have bought stuff. But the reality is those opportunities are probably still right in front of us today. It's just everybody's at a different stage in their investing career where it might make sense or might not make sense to buy those, right? Like what might not make sense for you right now might make sense for, Trenton or Jordy or someone else on the call, right? Because everybody is in a different stage of life and in their investing career. And we can talk about that a little bit more, later on in this call. But so it sounds like your mindset was, because it goes back to what you learned when you first started, was Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? How to build wealth through real estate. It wasn't so much, I want a lot of transactions to put quick dollars in my pocket. It was, I want a lot of transactions that can put long dollars in my pocket through rentals or whatever.
Yep. I've never been about the short term. I mean, we flip because it's good cash and, it's a fun project, right? And it kind of checks a lot of boxes. But the reality is I'm like Kiyosaki. I wish I'd have never sold anything. I wish I had everything. And it's just not possible because I've traded up, right? Those dollars have made babies, right? Any rental I've sold, they've made multiple babies. And so it's just a fact of life. But yeah, I've never been in the short term. And I think when you say mindset is everything in this business. Like we choose if we're going to be happy at what we're doing or if today's going to suck, or if that one phone call you got 20 minutes ago is going to ruin your day or not. And I think for me, like the one thing I can control is between my two ears. And so I pay money to go and get different perspective, different mindsets, whether that's a skills coach, it's a mindset coach, it's Tony Robbins, it's what the heck's his name? He's retired now, but I went to his thing like 3 times. I don't know. I can't remember his name. Sales training. I've hired personal coaches. Like all these things just go towards me being mentally strong. And that's one of the reasons why I like to ride a bike, right? Because we all have to do something. Like you can't just work and go home. Like you've got to do something to push yourself. So I ride a bike. Mostly it's a road bike, but I do some mountain bike. And, people think I'm crazy, right? But you literally suffer on this machine.
Yeah.
And you are the machine, right? Pushing the pedals and you're going up little cottonwood or big cottonwood, whatever it is. You just suffer until you get there. And it tells me that I can do hard things, that your real world problems are really not that bad and you can get through it. And
yeah, I love it. That last 2 minutes right there was the call, man. That was well worth our time here coming. That was really awesome. You got to do something every day that sucks, right? Like I've heard a lot of people say that you got to do something every day that sucks.
You might as well get it done in the morning.
That's right. Get it done. But you know what does suck? Let's circle back. What does suck and what is hard, yet it's so simple, and you've shown that it's simple, is creating that playbook in those systems, right? Like, I mean, admittedly, I've struggled with that my whole career. I've been more of a like, hey, I'll grab the hammer, I'll do the spreadsheet, I'll do this, I'll go throw the sign up in the yard, because in my mind, sometimes it's like, well, it's just going to take like 2 minutes, right? Like I can do it. It's going to take like 5 minutes. It'd be easier if I just do it. But, so it is hard, and some things are harder for other people than other things are, for other people. So it has been hard for me to implement those checklists and systems and the playbook. How would you recommend, if someone's out there going, man, I really need to do that? How would you recommend, what would be the next right step to do that? Like how have you done it where you've seen it be super successful for you?
Well, it's modeling, right? Matt, you like sports, right?
Yeah.
Who's your favorite team?
The Utes, man, right there behind you.
Okay, well, you can't own the Utes, but if you could own the Utes, would you own them and go out there and not have a playbook and not have a plan and coaches that are putting 100 hours a week into the benefit of that? Like, why do we think that we can step into the real estate game and buy $200,000 or $300,000 asset without a plan that's not really well thought out. And we're blind to things. Like, we have to hire sometimes coaches that push us, that make us think, and they don't necessarily give us the answers, that they say, look here, find this here, or go talk to this person. Like, what was your question again?
Well, like, what would be your someone's first step that you'd recommend? Like, if they're like me, where you're like, oh, how do I get out of my own way? Right. Like, what, and maybe it's just so logical to you because you've done it, but what would be, I don't know, say a flipper, for example. A lot of people are on flipping. Like, what would be to automate or systematize the flip process? What are some maybe cheap hacks or ways to kind of like think through that?
Well, first off, I would probably go model somebody that's really good at flipping. So I would say, hey, let me be a part of 5 deals. I'll go find them, source them, and I want to just be with you and see how you operate. And you take notes. And some flippers are not good. They might push out a good product. They may not make money, or they may not be very efficient at what they do. So I would, look, my mentor lost $200,000 in a wiring mistake. I don't need to have a $200,000 mistake to learn how it feels. I took copious notes. So what do? All my deals, whether it's private money or my own lending, have escrow instructions. That protects my butt, right? So simple things like that. It's like the wheel. Am I going to go out and recreate the wheel? No, I'm not. I'm not going to make it any more rounder, more geometrically fit to roll. What I can do is I can work on the bearing, right? Maybe I can provide a better grease, or I can input the right components so that thing can spin as quickly as possible. But I can't make a better spin, right? But what I can do is maybe make it deeper. Maybe the repetitions, me getting that up to my mouth, I can eat faster, right? A bigger spoon, but I can't change the concept of the spoon. So I'm not trying to recreate the wheel. I'm just trying to just keep doing things I know work.
Yeah. And then work on making them better. And if you don't know how to do it, find someone that does, pay them, or work for them, or do whatever you can to learn from them, learn from their mistakes, but also learn how they've done it well. And then, like you said, model, right? Like when I was getting my MRED at the U, one of our professors, he was so great. He called it horses for courses. And it kind of goes about like what you're talking about with the wheel, right? Like, you're not going to reinvent the racetrack, but you may also use that wheel. You may need a fat tire for, or you may need your road bike tire for certain thing. There's horses for courses, right? Like, you may need to ride a different horse at a different time based on, what you're doing. And that may be just a different tool in your tool belt that you're going to need to use. Trenton had a question, and let's just ask it since people are getting involved here. What kind of systems, while we're talking about systems, have you created to stay accountable to yourself and your goals and your vision?
For the last 3 or 4 years, I've always had a coach, and that coach is a weekly call. So we have a scoreboard, just like we all have bank accounts, right? And whether you like it or not, we keep score through our bank accounts, right? Maybe we're not advertising to other people, but if you're not keeping track of your own score, or your own bank account, or your own profitability, then shame on you. How do you know where you really are? It's not just log in and look at your bank account. If there's, 6 figures, you're good, right? That's not good enough. You got to push yourself. I have certainly been guilty of living underneath my capabilities, right? And that's probably my biggest downfall, is sometimes I don't live up to my potential because I have a ton, and I know what I'm capable of. And sometimes I'm just content, or I just don't want it, or I'm just happy, or I'm just fat and sassy. And so that's what I do for profitability. Like, it's not net deal. I don't care if I do 2 flips or 10 flips, right? It's net profit. Like, at the end of the day, it's my financial independence.
Well, if you don't mind sharing, what kind of metrics do you follow up with your weekly, your coach, that might be some ideas for others as well? And then, if you don't mind, like, where did you find this coach? Like, what kind of things do you personally track?
There's different types of coaches that I've had. One, which I didn't know when I hired him, was really heavy on skills. And I thought, man, I don't need that. My skills are pretty good. Dude, he totally flipped me on my butt and gave me definitely some liners and some skills that I've committed to memory that have changed my closing ratios. So maybe I don't get up to the bat as much as I'd like, but when I do, I hit it out of the park more often. So the one coach that I'm really loving right now is I really wanted somebody with multiple streams of income like I have and had done it, right? Like I'm not looking for somebody that's really good on the phone to tell me what to do. Like I want to see that he has successful flipping. He has retail. He's got a bunch of different rentals. He's got some entrepreneurial businesses. So I found him actually through Keller Williams. They have a MAPS coaching thing, and it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal for me. So I don't know that they coach outside of Keller, but and that's been a huge resource to me.
So that's a Keller proprietary thing. I've heard of that before, MAPS coaching.
It is phenomenal.
And so what do you maybe step back a little bit? What do you typically pay for your different education or seminars or coaching? What kind of investment monetarily do you make to yourself each year?
I think I'm about $1,000 to $1,500 a month in coaching. That's what I pay.
Any way to put a price on the return on that?
Well, he let me know that my second quarter production was up like 40%, and is that 100% due to him? No, but it's cool that he knows that, right? It's cool that I know it.
So what do you share with him then? This is kind of, I haven't really ever dug deep into this with you. What kind of information does he have about you? I mean, does he have your financials that
he does? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
it's open book. I mean, you've said it, I'm pretty plain language and maybe to a fault. Like if I'm ugly, just tell me. If I suck, let's hammer that out, right? Like there's no point beating around the bush. I think I've done reasonably well just being really upfront, and I'm okay with that. And I try to have some tact when I need it, but there's some things that sometimes you just got to say it. You got to call a spade, and you just have really tough conversations on the front. And for the most part, I think I've gotten some really good results because of that. And, you know, some days I'm frustrated and he just gets me where I need to be. Maybe it's a shift in mindset, or it's just that 2 millimeter thing that Tony Robbins talks about. Like, it's not like this huge shift that you really need. It's the subtleties of your business. It's the subtlety of your life, right?
Yeah.
Most of you are probably married, right? Like, it's not the big thing. It's not you coming home every night. It's like, how did you talk to her? Or how did she talk to you? You know, like, it's the subtlest of things that change your whole outlook. And they change your bank account. They change the progress of your year or how your month goes. If you got that deal closed or not, it is just how you deal with it.
No, that's awesome. I'm listening to a book right now called The Obstacle is the Way, written by Ryan Halliday. And Ryan Halliday gets into a lot of the Stoics, you know, and researches their writings like Marcus Aurelius, stuff like that. And he was talking in the part of the book I was listening to yesterday about, you know, Nick Saban, you know, coach of Alabama. He's just super successful. And he talks about how he doesn't, you know, focus on, okay, we're going to win the SEC championship. We're going to win the national championship. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to win our process and our systems every day. We're going to win that next drill. That's all we're looking forward to, right? We're going to win how to execute on that play, right? And, you know, it's kind of like your analogy with sports team that you gave me as far as, you know, would you have a coach? Would you have, so we can get caught up in that bigger vision, right? But then it sounds like, you know, where you've had success is breaking that down into daily, you know, hourly, whatever you want to call it, goals or things that you need to do, steps you need to take to get there. And then when you don't know what to do, or you feel like you need someone to kind of like, you know, be your gas pedal a little bit, you know, and your correction is you hire it out, right? Like you hire it out to create those boundaries to help you.
Well, part of it is it's what do you like to do, but what do you get paid well to do? So me personally, I love seeing progress, right? Like I love to project manage, but I don't get paid any more to project manage. I can have Lindsay do it for me, and she may not know construction like I know it, but can she get the same result? Absolutely she can. And can I still have the profitability the same amount? Yes. That frees up my time to do other things that get me paid a lot better. And so, you know, I personally don't mind swinging a hammer. I'm decent at sheetrock, or I'm decent at roofing or framing a house, but I don't even mow my own lawn anymore, because if I'm going to have that time, I'm going to spend it with my kids, I'm going to do some exercise, or I'm going to work or do something like that. So it's just valuing your money and your time in a different way. And I think, I'm not too good to mow my lawn, but for me to save $35, like I just can earn more than that.
Well, just like we look at real estate, what's the highest and best use of that property? It's kind of like looking at yourself. What's the highest and best use of your time, and your production? No, that's awesome. I love it.
You gotta have a dollar amount on every task you do. And if you don't know it, you got to list them all out, right? And you're going to have a super long page, and then you circle 6 or 7 things that you're going to keep. And there better be a return you're getting for those items, and the rest goes to somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And just kind of wrap up this part about like accountability and tracking. What are things you track on a weekly or monthly basis or quarterly basis that are part of your process to, like, a metric that you can say, all right, this is not worth spending time on, or this is worth spending time on? Or have there been things that you thought were important at one point that you abandoned doing? I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, it's hard to think back and say like, oh, what did I used to do? Because it's like, once it becomes ingrained in you, it's just part of your process. But yeah, I used to go to the bank, and I used to pick up the mail, and I used to do things like that. Oh, I'm there or not, or whatnot. But some of those things just don't happen anymore. Like I don't know. So metrics, like, we know we don't get closings if we don't have appointments. So I track appointments. We know we don't get appointments unless we have good conversations. So I track conversations. We know we don't have conversations if we don't have dials. So you have to track dials, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like one thing leads to another, right? But if you're not doing the daily task of lead generation or following up, how can you expect to get the 10 closings a month you want?
Right.
And so those metrics, that measurement or that scoreboard has to happen, or there's no way you're going to achieve your goal, right? And it's okay if you don't achieve your goal. You just have to adjust for what you're willing to do. Right. So I've got somebody I know extremely well. They want to make a bunch of money and they want to do this and that, but they're not willing to because their activities don't play out. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to get real with yourself. Like, what are you willing to do and what are you not?
That's great. Well, we got about maybe 15, 20 more minutes left. What I want to get a little bit of your passion as far as specific deals or real estate. What kind of things, and it doesn't have to be right now, but what kind of deals or projects or whatever either get you really excited now that you could spend all day doing, or maybe one you've had in the past that's like, man, that was so cool. If I could do that all day, every day, that's like what I would love spending all my time doing.
Yeah, I'd like the market to slow down a little bit so I could do some more of those opportunities, and hopefully it will, because I think it'll lead to more chances for me I like to solve problems. Like, I just don't feel like I'm too good to like open doors for somebody, or to make a smooth transaction or communicate really well so that people can get wealth creation. So I really like apartments, whether it's a duplex or triplex or fourplex or larger, like that really gets me going. Like, I feel like I've got a good system for that. Maybe not the super large complexes, but we just know how to achieve results. We know how to maintain the rents or increase the rents or do the repairs that are necessary. So I think that is a strength of mine. And we know how to recognize and really do the value add on that. I'd like to say I'm really great at development. I've got a couple things going developing wise that are just making me kind of lose my hair. As you can tell, I'm starting to lose it. And it's probably because of developing opportunities, trying to negotiate with people, and things don't always go your way. But I think I've got this sickness where I drive around and I think this is what could be, and this would be really awesome here. And I know the city will allow this. And so I get really good at looking at zoning and looking at things. And that's kind of like my law dreamland time on the computer. And sometimes I spend more time doing that than I should, but I love doing that. So it's great to do the little single transactions, right? And I don't hate those by any means. Like, my philosophy is I really just don't do things I just don't like to do.
Right.
Like, I'll have tough conversations. Maybe I don't love those, but I don't want to weed. I don't want to pick up the
Right.
brush. I don't want to trim the trees, but I just do things that I like to do. And really, I think we talk about some of this mind shift is I've just learned to like whatever I'm doing. 3 or 4 years ago, I went through this situation where, you start getting older and your body doesn't respond to food like it should. And I had to do a massive shift. Like I had to hire a nutritionist.
This
And
is right about when I met you, by the way. I remember this very well.
yeah, I mean, dude, it was hard. Like to lose a pound a week or whatever it takes, like that is hard business. Like it
Yeah.
is super challenging to change like 40 years of habits or whatever you're going through. And if you can do that, if you can learn to like vegetables and get sugar out of your diet and control when you eat and what you eat, you can do anything. And so I think I've just tricked my mind into liking boneless, skinless chicken and liking hard work and sometimes sacrificing and like sometimes you get your wife upset because you've got to go deal with a client or you got to go deal with a problem, but these are the things that have to get done. And so the mindset is you just have to like what it takes to get everything to the finish line.
I love it. Yeah, it's so I always listen to Darren Daly every day. And today, Darren Hardy, his thing was about stress, right? Like, what are you stressing about? And if you're stressing about the small stuff, then like your goals and your dreams aren't big enough. But if what stresses you out are like huge, big giant goals and stuff, then that kind of shows you the level of like where your thinking is. And so, you're talking about what's stressing you out. It's like these bigger development deals, and it's not the small ones because you've had so many reps at the plate doing those that they're a little bit more automatic. But you've always just got to be a little uncomfortable, right? Or you're kind of going backwards, right? And so I like what you say about learn to love what you're doing, solving the problems. The bigger problem you solve, the more money you're going to make. And really, the more enjoyable it's going to be. And then I really like what you said, driving around. I mean, anybody on this call that wants to go make some money this week, get in the car, go drive around or spend time on the MLS and look at things from the viewpoint of, oh, okay, this is cool, but what could it be? And then what is it going to take to get there? Is there going to be profit in it? If not, where would I need to buy this property at to solve the problem to get it where it could be to then, me benefit from it and make money? And you can do that with a home. You can do that with rents. You can do that with a development. You can do that with anything, which is, why we all love real estate. There's always a problem to be solved and always a better way to make something than the way it is today.
And here's one more caveat to that, because the market's going to shift and it's going to change. And if this is your first development and it's a year and a half out, market's going to be different that you bring that thing to market to, and it may change. So along with what you said, which I support 100%, is if you're really good at something, stick with it. Really, if you want to be good at business, it should be slightly boring. It should be repeatable. It should be like widgets, right? Like stuff that's on autopilot and going. I think we know way too many people that got bored just flipping single family houses. They got into massive land development, the market changed and they lost. And maybe they had to file bankruptcy. And so for me, I like a varied approach. Like I like my income coming from 6 or 7 different things. So if the market changes, I'm not caught with my pants down. I've got this going and that going. And maybe that's not going to pay off for 6 months. I'm totally cool with that.
That's awesome. And Nora's on the call, and I know Nora has been, hitting it hard, learning as much as she can, and making those small steps to continue to gain momentum. And so she has a question about, just from your perspective, where would you see the market going? And I know you don't have a crystal ball, and maybe the better question to ask, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Is how do you operate knowing that you don't know what's coming, but you might have a gut feeling about where things might go? Like what precautions are you taking or not, or what opportunities are you maybe not taking that you would have taken 3 years ago, or how are you handling it?
So I learned about 3 years ago, I thrive in uncertainty. So I tested it out. Last summer, I went to Europe and I booked nothing. I booked a plane ticket into Amsterdam and 3 weeks later, a plane ticket out of Paris. And we just figured it out, right? And sometimes it's the day of. And it was fascinating and fun and not stressful. And 3 months ago when COVID hit, like I ramped things up. Uncertainty hit and I was like, boom, 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 let's take care of opportunities. There's some fears over here, let's go after it. I think you've got to reinvent yourself 2 to 3 times a year. And so what I mean by that, when the market changes, you've got to have an answer and a strategy. I'm phenomenal at short sales and foreclosure. I did a short sale earlier this year and people are like, there's no short sales out there. Well, there are, and they do happen. And when they come back, I will thrive in that. So it's really just how quickly you're willing to shift from survive to thrive. That's just what I thrive in, and I'm cool with it. And it really doesn't matter to me. I can probably actually make more money in a down economy than an up economy. But it just so happens that we're probably at the end of the cycle. Everybody's been saying for 2 or 3 years it's gonna stop and it's gonna fall off. I do think it's probably gonna slow down. I'm not gonna show you my crystal ball, but I think it's gonna slow down. Maybe it's gonna slow down this winter, and maybe it won't rebound in the spring, and maybe we're gonna be kind of flat. Do I think we're gonna fall off a cliff? No. I think our metrics are really strong for jobs, for job diversification, for net in-migration, for office space versus industrial and multifamily, and our population centers and our growth rate. So I'm not terribly worried about that. That's why I prefer to invest and live in Utah versus invest in the Mid-East.
Jordy Clark, does your crystal ball show lots of foreclosures? And if it does or doesn't, what would you do if it does or doesn't?
I don't think there's going to be as many as some people have prognosticated. Dude, the last 10 years have been all full doc loans, right? Like, I just don't see that there's going to be this huge foreclosure boom. Like, possibly, but we always have stuff where there's always going to be 1%, 2%, 3%, notice to default type foreclosure stuff. There's always people getting divorced, people losing their jobs, people, it always happens. So I just don't think there's going to be a big boom. I wish there would be. And I'm fine with that, but I just don't think it's going to be huge.
And don't you think too, banks, just like we've seen with COVID and the ability to kind of pivot a little bit and come up with creative options for people that might be struggling with payments with, initially it was the deferral, but then it was like, oh, I just throw the payments on the back end, right? Like that's going to solve a lot of problems and maybe slow down the foreclosure rate as well.
Well, think about it.
If
you bought something 2 years ago and you never even made a payment on it, you have enough equity to just sell it and probably make some cash or break even.
Yeah, right.
So why would that thing ever go to foreclosure?
Right.
You need to go attack it in the default stage or something like that.
Yeah, and Jordy, what you'll see is like, back in the day, it was the wholesalers were really the REO agents, back in the day, right? Like wholesalers have replaced REO agents because those wholesalers are going to the equity first and the seller first. Whereas, when there was a ton of foreclosures, it was just the opposite. There was no equity and the banks were taking a bath. So, your outlet for the distressed properties were, the REO agents and the bank agents. So, but your point, there's opportunity everywhere, right? Like there's opportunity if you know where you're looking to find it, whether it's going up or whether it's going down. And there's always buyers. There's always someone to buy your product. You just got to adjust your price.
Yeah, and in 2004, I was doing so many foreclosures and short sales, and like the process was elongated because we had so much in the pipeline, right? And I got on some webinar maybe 3 months ago, and they were talking about like the good old days and thinking that was to be the process forward. And I was like, no way. I just did a short sale, and it was the simplest, fastest process. I think it's still going to go with W-2s and tax returns and hardship statement and financial statement, all that stuff. But I just don't think we're going to have as big cluster that we'd all want.
So as we kind of wrap up here, give us some ideas of where you go, and you've kind of already mentioned it, but I got to imagine a lot of people here are going, man, I need to do more of this, or I need to do more of that. I know me personally, it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I really got heavily involved in, kind of the personal development. I joined different groups like Strategic Coach. I'm doing a group called Genius Network. I started networking a lot more with the local RIAs. I joined different groups or networks that add value and that I can add value to, like Mike Baird's Smarter Real Estate Tribe. I do my daily intake of like Darren Daily and read books. What are some of your top, your current favorite things that one are either cheap or easy to do that give you kind of that energy to stay on track every day?
Yeah, Audible is like what, $16 a month. You can buy credits. I mean, I do that. I'm constantly learning. And I mean, I'm learning right now about just wealth, and it's actually less real estate, but it's just buying like some stocks or generally hiring somebody to buy some stocks in down market, which we're in kind of, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you're going to grow financially at the rate you're mentally growing. So going back to that rap, P. Diddy said, you know, I ain't finished growing. You know, I'm not finished. I'm not done. Like, you know, maybe I'm closer to retirement than I am a starter, but I'm still moving at a high capacity. And I'm always looking to get better. And so traditionally, when we were flying out, if you can remember, I mean, I was planning on stuff quarterly to fly out, paying money to go learn, whether it's mindset, whether it's real estate directly related, whether it's just learning in general. So there's relationship stuff that we do to grow. I mean, I think the more you're in it, the more you want a rich, full life. Mm-hmm. And it can't just be 100% real estate, right? Like there are things that will get you further. That's why I like Tony Robbins. It's not directed at just real estate, right? But is my mindset the thing that holds me back most of the time? It is. You know, why can't I do that? Why can somebody else do it? So I think you need to set a budget, whatever that is. Maybe it's 10% of your profits you set aside to go back into it. Like we go to college, and some of us say, screw college. Now I'm just going to go straight up working. This is my whole take on college. It taught me how to learn.
Yeah.
Did it teach me everything I'm going to need to know for my 40-year career? Hell no, right? But it taught me, hey, how do I get through a syllabus? How do I learn what I need to learn so I can get the grade so that I can get the job, right? You've got to keep learning. And if you're not dedicating a certain amount of your time budget monthly or quarterly or annually, you will stop. You will digress. You will recede, you know, just like your hairline, right? Like it's going to go backwards. You got to do stuff to make your brain bigger.
I love it. I love it. These are great reminders. And since we got, you know, engagement here on the chat, we're going to keep going until we get to about 1 o'clock here. So if you can summarize in 3 minutes, I know we're kind of bouncing back and forth here, but Jordy wants to know any tips on having a high volume of flips at the same time, 4+. I know Jordy's been doing flips and you know, Jordy, I'm not speaking for you, but you sometimes get uncomfortable doing maybe 2 or 3, but any tips for Jordy doing maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 at a time?
Yeah, I would say, Jordy, you got an assistant, you have a team member, somebody that can help you, because really you're only limited what your time level is. And so, yeah, if 4 is comfortable to you, 4 is comfortable to me. But at the end of the day, like, it's net profit. Like I personally don't do a flip for 10 grand. And my budget's pretty right on. Like, I'm not waiting for the market to go up 5% for me to make that 10 grand or 20 grand or whatever. So for me, I have a standard, right? In this price range, under 300 grand, I need to comfortably net 20K for me to even try to touch it. And in reality, I may only visit the property a few times. So it's more a management style for you. Like, what can you handle? What are you willing to handle? And what are you willing to because you got to put time into training this individual to help you, right? They can't I think that's our problem, is we just hire somebody and say, go do this. You know what I mean? And they don't know. So they need to follow you. And then maybe they help you create the systems that hold themselves accountable so that you get the net result. But yeah, it's a really vague question, but for me, it goes down to, can somebody help you do it? What's the net profitability numbers? And is it gonna obstruct your cash cow, what you're doing right now in real estate, right? Your commission work.
Yeah, and so Jordy, think about it like what Justin said earlier. Create those checklists, then the playbook, and translate what you've done with your residential real estate, especially with you representing your home builder, and just replicate that, because you've gotten really good at being a little bit more hands-off as an agent, and just use those same thought processes to translate it to flips. What can you do to replace what you would normally do? And then sometimes, Justin, it just comes down to having the funds available to do it, which could be a whole nother call for another day, is making sure you have the bandwidth and the resources as far as people to help you, but then also making sure you don't run out of money. You know, Travis on the call could attest to this a little bit. What happens when you have flips where you run out of money? They end up being really, really lousy flips, right? Because you take the time to raise more money, and then the house is sitting on the market 3 or 4 extra months, and it just turns into a train wreck.
But Jordy, you can also leverage the other way, right? Which is what I do. Like, I don't write contracts. I don't write addendums. My team does the due diligence, right? Like, I don't attend inspections. Sometimes I don't even attend like final walkthrough or closing, right? Like, is that client though hung out to dry? Absolutely not. Somebody's calling them every couple of days, right? And customer service is our mantra, right? Like, they've got to have a superior experience. And so you can leverage the real estate side as well, which is probably what you know the best. And so if you can have somebody doing all the back end stuff and you're just the face taking the phone call and you say, hey, make this offer and this is what you need to do, and boom, it's done.
I love it. Well, Justin, I could talk to you all day, and we do talk a lot, but this has been great to have you on the call. And sorry again for the technical difficulties there earlier. I got to figure out why Zoom did that to me, but you're the man. I really appreciate it. If anybody on the call wants to talk to Justin, you okay giving out your phone number?
Yeah. Yep. It's 801-842-3737.
Okay. I just threw it in the chat. You guys can grab it there. Justin, I really appreciate it. I look forward to doing more deals with you and talking with you offline, and everyone have a great day.
Cheerio.
Okay. Thanks so much.